The stagecoach rattled into Williamsburg, Virginia in the sweltering heat of August 1878, and when the door swung open, Warren Hale saw her step down with one hand pressed against her left cheek, trying to hide the purple bruise that spread from her eye to her jaw like spilled wine on fine linen. He had been loading supplies onto his wagon outside the general store when the coach arrived, and something about the way she moved, careful and hurting, made him set down the bag of flour he was holding and walk toward her without thinking twice about it. She was small, maybe 5 feet tall at most, with dark auburn hair pinned up beneath a dusty traveling hat and a green dress that had seen better days. Her right hand clutched a worn leather bag, and she looked around the town square like a doe searching for wolves. "Miss, you need some help." Warren kept his voice soft, approaching from the side so he would not startle her. She flinched anyway, turning to face him with wide green eyes that held more fear than the midday sun held heat. Her hand pressed harder against her cheek, and she shook her head quickly. "I am fine, thank you." But she was not fine. Warren could see that clear as day. He removed his hat, holding it against his chest in what he hoped was a non-threatening gesture. "Name is Warren Hale. I work the ranch just outside town. I do not mean you any harm, miss. Just thought you might need directions or something." She studied him for a long moment, taking in his sun-weathered face, his brown hair that needed cutting, his simple work clothes that were dusty from a morning of ranch work. He was 26 years old, tall and lean from hard labor, and he tried his best to look harmless under her scrutiny. Natalie Harper," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I am looking for a boarding house. I need a room." "Mrs. Patterson runs a clean place just down the street there," Warren said, pointing with his hat. "Good woman, fair prices." Natalie nodded but did not move. She swayed slightly on her feet, and Warren realized she might collapse right there in the dusty street. "When did you last eat, Miss Harper?" Her silence was answer enough. Warren made a decision then that would change both their lives, though he did not know it yet. "Let me get you something at the restaurant first. Then I will walk you over to Mrs. Patterson's place. Make sure you get settled proper." "I cannot accept," Natalie said quickly. "I do not know you, true enough. But you look like you are about to fall over, and I was raised to help folks in need. No strings attached, just a meal and making sure you get somewhere safe. That is all." Something in his voice must have convinced her, or maybe she was just too exhausted to argue anymore, because she gave a small nod. Warren offered his arm, and after a moment's hesitation, she took it lightly, barely touching him. They walked to Sarah's restaurant, a small establishment run by Sarah Mitchell, a widow who made the best chicken and dumplings in 3 counties. The lunch crowd had mostly cleared out, leaving just a few ranch hands at a corner table. Warren guided Natalie to a table by the window, pulling out her chair before sitting across from her. Sarah came over, wiping her hands on her apron, her kind eyes taking in Natalie's bruised face without comment. "What can I get you folks?" "Whatever the special is, 2 plates, Warren said. "And some water, please." After Sarah left, an uncomfortable silence settled between them. Natalie kept her face turned slightly away, still trying to hide the bruise, and Warren searched for something to say that would not make things worse. "Been a hot summer," he finally offered. "Yes." "You traveling far?" "Far enough." Warren nodded, accepting that she did not want to share her story. That was fine. Everyone had a right to their privacy, especially when they showed up in a new town looking like someone had used them for boxing practice. Sarah brought the water first, and Natalie drank like she had been crossing the desert. Then came the food, hot beef stew with fresh bread, and Warren watched as Natalie tried to eat slowly and politely but could not quite manage it. She was starving. "Take your time," he said gently. Plenty more where that came from if you want seconds." She glanced up at him, surprise flickering across her face, and for just a second, her hand dropped away from her cheek, giving him a full view of the damage. The bruise was at least 2 days old, he figured, yellowing at the edges but still angry purple in the center. Her lip had been split too, though that was healing. Warren felt anger build in his chest, hot and tight, but he kept it off his face. Whoever had done that to her was not here, and the last thing she needed was another man looking angry around her. "Thank you," Natalie said quietly, setting down her spoon. "I have not eaten since yesterday morning. Where are you coming from?" She hesitated, then seemed to decide he had earned at least some of her story. "Richmond. I was working as a schoolteacher there. Good profession. It was." She looked down at her bowl. "Until I could not do it anymore." Warren did not push. Instead, he finished his own stew and signaled Sarah for more bread. When it came, he pushed half the basket toward Natalie, who took a piece with trembling fingers. "The ranch I work at, the Hollister place, they could use help in the main house," Warren said, the idea forming as he spoke. "Mrs. Hollister has been looking for someone to help with cooking and cleaning and such. Her arthritis has been acting up something fierce. It comes with a room over the stable and meals. The pay is not much, but it is steady work." Natalie looked up at him with those wide green eyes. "Why would you help me? You do not know anything about me." "I know you are hungry and hurt and a long way from home," Warren said simply. "That is enough. I could be a criminal, a thief." "Are you? No. Then I guess we are fine." A tiny smile tugged at the corner of her mouth, the first he had seen, and it transformed her whole face despite the bruise. She was beautiful, Warren realized, and immediately felt guilty for noticing at a time like this. "I would like to meet Mrs. Hollister," Natalie said, "if the offer is real." "It is real. But first, let us get you that room at Mrs. Patterson's so you have a place to stay tonight and get cleaned up. I will take you out to the ranch tomorrow morning if that suits you." "That would be very kind." They finished eating and Warren paid Sarah, waving off Natalie's protests. Then they walked down to the boarding house, a neat 2-story building painted white with green shutters. Mrs. Patterson was a plump woman in her 50s who took one look at Natalie and immediately became all business, showing her to a clean room on the 2nd floor with a window overlooking the street. "Hot water for a bath?" Mrs. Patterson asked. "Yes, please," Natalie said, and there was such relief in her voice that Warren felt that anger build up again. He waited downstairs while Natalie got settled, and when she came back down, she looked a bit steadier on her feet. "Thank you again, Mr. Hale, for everything. Warren is fine. I will come by tomorrow morning around 8 if that works for you. We can head out to the ranch then. I will be ready." Warren tipped his hat to her and to Mrs. Patterson, then headed back to his wagon. The supplies still needed to be loaded and brought back to the ranch before dark. As he worked, his mind kept returning to Natalie Harper and her bruised face and the way she flinched when he first approached her. Someone had hurt her badly. Not just physically, but in deeper ways that would take longer to heal. And for reasons he could not fully explain, Warren felt a fierce protectiveness toward this woman he had just met, a desire to make sure no one ever hurt her like that again. The next morning, Warren washed up extra carefully, put on his better shirt, and borrowed one of the ranch horses to ride into town. He arrived at Mrs. Patterson's boarding house right at 8 to find Natalie waiting on the porch, her bag in hand. She wore the same green dress, but she had cleaned it as best she could and her hair was neatly pinned. The bruise looked even worse in the morning light, but she held her chin up as she walked toward him. "Good morning," Warren said, dismounting. "I brought the wagon. It is a bit of a ride out to the ranch. I do not mind." He helped her up onto the wagon seat, careful not to grip her arm too tight or move too fast. Then he climbed up beside her and clicked to the horses, guiding them out of town and onto the dusty road that led west. The Hollister Ranch was about 5 miles outside Williamsburg, a decent spread of land with cattle and horses and fields of corn and tobacco. John and Margaret Hollister were good people who had hired Warren 3 years ago when he drifted into town looking for work. They paid fair wages and treated their workers with respect, which was more than could be said for a lot of ranch owners. As they rode, Natalie slowly relaxed, her shoulders dropping from around her ears. She looked at the countryside with interest, taking in the rolling hills and the thick forests that bordered the road. "It is beautiful here," she said. "Better than Richmond. Different. Richmond is all buildings and people and noise. This is peaceful." "Gets lonely sometimes," Warren admitted. "But I like the quiet. Gives a man time to think." "I like the quiet too," Natalie said softly. They did not talk much more on the ride, but it was a comfortable silence. Warren pointed out landmarks along the way, and Natalie nodded, taking it all in. When they reached the ranch, John Hollister was out front working on a fence post. He was a big man in his 50s with a thick beard and work-roughened hands. He looked up as the wagon approached, squinting against the sun. "Morning, Warren. Who is this?" "This is Miss Natalie Harper. She is looking for work, and I told her about how Mrs. Hollister could use help in the house." John's gaze took in Natalie's bruised face, and his expression hardened for just a moment before smoothing out. "Well then, let us go talk to Margaret. She is inside." Warren helped Natalie down from the wagon, and they followed John into the house. It was a comfortable place, nothing fancy but well built and well kept. Margaret Hollister was in the kitchen, kneading bread dough despite the obvious pain in her swollen knuckles. "Margaret, this young lady is looking for work," John said gently. Margaret turned, and her motherly face immediately softened when she saw Natalie. "Oh, honey, come sit down. Would you like some coffee?" "That would be lovely, thank you," Natalie said. They sat around the kitchen table, and Margaret poured coffee for everyone while John explained what Warren had told him. Margaret listened, her eyes on Natalie's face, taking in not just the bruise but the fear and exhaustion behind it. "Can you cook?" Margaret asked. "Yes, madam. My mother taught me. I can bake bread, make preserves, cook just about anything. Clean?" "Yes, madam. Do laundry without shrinking everything," a small smile. "Yes, madam," Margaret nodded approvingly. "The room over the stable is small but clean. It has a bed, a dresser, a washstand. Meals with us, 3 times a day. We pay $20 a month. Sundays off, though I would appreciate help with Sunday dinner since that is when John's brother and his family usually come over. Does that sound fair?" "More than fair," Natalie said, and her voice cracked slightly. "Thank you. Thank you so much. When can you start?" "Right now, if you need me." Margaret smiled. "Let us get you settled in first. Warren, could you show her to the room? John, help me move those boxes we have been storing up there." Warren led Natalie back outside and across the yard to the stable. The room was accessed by an external staircase, and when he opened the door, dust motes danced in the sunlight streaming through the window. It was small, as Margaret had said, but it was clean and private, with a real bed and a colorful quilt. "This is wonderful," Natalie said, setting her bag on the bed. She turned to Warren, and there were tears in her eyes. "I cannot believe strangers are being this kind to me." "You deserve kindness," Warren said firmly. "Whatever happened to you before, whatever made you leave Richmond, that was not your fault. You hear me?" She nodded, wiping at her eyes. "My husband, former husband, I should say, he started drinking about a year after we married. Got mean when he drank. I tried to be a good wife, tried to help him, but it just kept getting worse." She touched her cheek gently. "This was the last time. I knew if I stayed, the next time might kill me. So I waited until he left for work, took what money I had saved and bought a ticket on the first stagecoach heading anywhere. You did the right thing, Warren said. Takes real courage to leave. I was so scared. Still am, honestly. What if he comes looking for me? He would have to go through all of us, Warren said. And I promise you, nobody here is going to let anyone hurt you. You are safe now, Natalie. She looked at him with such hope and gratitude that it made his chest tight. You promise? I promise. And I keep my promises. Gentleness, she whispered. You have been nothing but gentle with me. I had almost forgotten what that felt like. Warren wanted to pull her into his arms and tell her everything would be all right, but he knew that was the last thing she needed from a man she barely knew. So instead, he just nodded and said, I will let you get settled. Come over to the house when you are ready, and Mrs. Hollister will show you around. Over the following weeks, Natalie became part of the ranch's daily rhythm. She helped Margaret with cooking and cleaning, tended the garden, preserved vegetables for the winter. The bruise on her face faded from purple to yellow to green and finally disappeared, though Warren noticed she still flinched sometimes when someone moved too quickly near her. He found himself looking for excuses to be near the main house. Suddenly, he needed to fix the porch step that had been loose for months. The kitchen door hinges required oiling. The window in the parlor stuck and needed sanding. Margaret watched his transparent efforts with amusement, and John ribbed him about it during their morning chores, but Warren did not care. He wanted to be where Natalie was. He was careful, though. Always gentle, always respectful. He did not crowd her or touch her without permission. When they talked, which they did more and more often, he let her control the conversation, let her share what she wanted to share without pushing. One evening in late September, after the day's work was done, Warren found Natalie sitting on the porch of her room, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. He approached slowly, making sure she heard him coming. Mind if I join you? He asked. Please do. He sat down on the step below her, giving her space. They watched the sunset in comfortable silence for a few minutes before Natalie spoke. I got a letter today, from a friend in Richmond. Warren's stomach clenched. Oh, she said, my husband has been looking for me. He went to the school to my mother's house. He is angry. Her voice was steady, but her hands were twisted together in her lap. He does not know where you are, Warren said firmly. And even if he did, he would have to go through me first, through all of us. I do not want to bring trouble to you all. You have been so kind. You are not bringing trouble. He is the one causing it, not you. There is a difference. She looked at him, and in the fading light her eyes were luminous. Why do you care so much, Warren? You barely know me. It was the question he had been asking himself for weeks, though he knew the answer. He had known it almost from the first moment he saw her step off that stagecoach. Because I am falling in love with you, he said simply. I know that is probably the last thing you want to hear right now, and I am not asking for anything from you. I just want you to know that you matter to me. Your safety, your happiness, they matter to me. Natalie stared at him, her mouth slightly open in surprise. Warren, I am not sure I can give you what you want. After everything that happened, I am not sure I know how to love someone anymore. I am not asking for anything, he repeated gently. I am just telling you how I feel. What you do with that information is entirely up to you. If you want me to keep my distance, I will. If you want to just be friends, we will be friends. But I will always keep my promise to you. I will always be gentle, and I will always keep you safe if you let me. She was quiet for a long moment, and Warren thought maybe he had made a terrible mistake, had pushed too hard too fast. Then she stood up and came down the step to sit beside him, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. I think I am falling in love with you too, she whispered. And that terrifies me. Warren's heart leaped, but he kept his voice calm. Why does it terrify you? Because I fell in love before, and look what happened. I thought I knew him. I thought he was kind and good, and then he changed. Or maybe he was always like that and I just did not see it. How do I know I am not making the same mistake again? You do not, Warren said honestly. You cannot know for certain, but I can tell you this. I will never raise my hand to you. I will never hurt you, not physically, not with words. If I am angry, I will walk away until I calm down. If we disagree, we will talk it through. And if you ever want to leave, if you ever want to go, I will not stop you. Your freedom is yours always. You would let me go. I would hate it, but yes. Because keeping you against your will would not be love. It would be possession, and you are not property to be owned. You are a person with your own thoughts and feelings and choices. She leaned her head against his shoulder, and Warren held perfectly still, barely breathing. I do not want to rush anything, she said. We will not. We will go at whatever pace feels right to you. Can we just sit here for a while, as long as you want? They sat together as the sun finished setting and the stars began to come out. It was full dark before Natalie finally stood up and Warren stood with her. Thank you, she said. For understanding. Always. She reached out and took his hand, just for a moment, squeezing his fingers before letting go. Then she went into her room and Warren walked back to the bunkhouse where he shared quarters with the other ranch hands, his heart full. The courtship that followed was slow and sweet. Warren brought Natalie wildflowers from the meadow. They took walks together in the evenings, talking about everything and nothing. He told her about his childhood in Tennessee, about the parents he lost to fever when he was 16, about drifting for years before finding his place at the Hollister Ranch. She told him more about her life in Richmond, about her dreams of teaching, about the slow way her marriage had turned from happiness to horror. The first time he hit me, he cried and apologized, she said one evening as they walked along the creek that ran through the ranch property. Said it would never happen again. I believed him, and it did not happen again for months. But then it did, and the time between incidents got shorter and shorter. By the end, it was happening every few days. I felt like I was walking on eggshells all the time, trying not to make him angry, but everything made him angry. Warren listened, his hands clenched at his sides. You did not deserve any of that. I know that now. For a long time, I thought maybe I did. Maybe if I had been a better wife, cooked better meals, kept a cleaner house, been prettier or smarter or more interesting, he would not have been so angry all the time. None of that is true. The problem was never you. It was him. I know. But knowing it in my head and believing it in my heart are two different things. Warren stopped walking and turned to face her. Let me help you believe it, however long it takes. She smiled at him, and it was real and warm. You already are. In October, John's brother Thomas and his family came for their usual Sunday dinner. Thomas had 3 children, and they ran wild around the ranch, playing with the dogs and begging Warren to let them sit on the horses. Natalie was wonderful with them, patient and kind, making up games and telling stories that had them hanging on her every word. After dinner, while the children played outside and the adults sat on the porch drinking coffee, Thomas leaned over to Warren. That young lady is special. You planning to marry her, if she will have me eventually, but we are taking our time. Smart man. Margaret says she has been through hell, she has, but she is strong, stronger than she knows. Well, she fits right in here. The children love her already. Warren looked through the window to where Natalie was helping Margaret with the dishes, laughing at something Margaret said. I love her, he said simply. We can tell, Thomas said with a grin. You look at her like she hung the moon. Feels like she did. As autumn deepened into winter, Warren and Natalie grew closer. She let him hold her hand when they walked. She leaned against him when they sat on the porch. One evening in November, when snow was threatening in the heavy gray clouds overhead, she kissed him for the first time. They were standing by the stable, and Warren was showing her the new foal that had been born that morning. The little thing was all legs and big eyes, nuzzling against its mother. Natalie was enchanted, reaching out carefully to stroke the foal's soft nose. "It is beautiful," she said. "You are beautiful," Warren said without thinking. She turned to look at him, and something shifted in her expression. She stepped closer, and Warren held his breath. Then she reached up, put her hand on his cheek, and kissed him. It was soft and sweet and careful, and when she pulled back, Warren could see tears in her eyes. "That was the first kiss I have given freely in a very long time," she said. "Every kiss with him felt like something I owed, something demanded, but this was different. This was my choice." Warren pulled her carefully into his arms, and this time she came willingly, resting her head against his chest. "Thank you for trusting me," he said into her hair. "Thank you for being worth trusting." Winter came to Virginia with snow and cold winds. The ranch work became harder, more demanding, but Warren did not mind. Every evening he got to see Natalie, got to talk with her, hold her. They spent Christmas together, exchanging simple gifts. He gave her a shawl he had bought in town, soft blue wool that matched her eyes. She gave him a shirt she had sewn herself, every stitch perfect. "I have not sewn for pleasure in years," she told him as he admired it, "but I wanted to make something for you. It is perfect. You are perfect." "I am not perfect, Warren. I am broken in a lot of ways." "You are not broken. You are healing. There is a difference." On New Year's Eve, as 1879 approached, they stood together in the barn while snow fell softly outside. The animals were settled and warm, the ranch quiet except for the occasional lowing of cattle. "New year, new start," Warren said. "I like the sound of that. Natalie, I know we have only known each other a few months, but I want you to know that my feelings have not changed. If anything, they have grown stronger. I love you. I want to build a life with you, but only when you are ready. There is no rush." She looked up at him, her green eyes serious. "I love you too, Warren. I think I have loved you since that first day when you bought me lunch and did not ask questions, when you were kind for no reason except that it was the right thing to do. Does this mean what I think it means?" "Ask me properly and we will find out." Warren's heart pounded. He took both her hands in his. "Natalie Harper, will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life showing you what real love looks like? I promise I will always be gentle with you. I will always keep you safe. I will work hard to provide for you and any family we might have. I will listen when you talk and respect your opinions even when we disagree. I will never raise my hand or my voice to you in anger, and I will love you until my dying day." Tears streamed down her face, but she was smiling. "Yes. Yes, Warren, I will marry you." He kissed her then, properly this time, pouring all his love and promise into it. She kissed him back with equal fervor, and when they finally pulled apart, they were both breathless. "When?" he asked. "Soon. I do not want a big wedding. Just us and the people who have been kind to us. Maybe in the spring." Spring sounds perfect. They told the Hollisters the next morning, and Margaret cried happy tears while John shook Warren's hand hard enough to hurt. "You treat her right," John said, though his tone was warm. "I will. I promise." The next few months were spent planning a simple wedding and preparing for their life together. Warren had saved his wages carefully over the years, and he used the money to buy supplies to build a small house on the edge of the Hollister property. John had offered him a piece of land as a wedding present, saying Warren had earned it through years of hard work. Every evening after his regular work was done, Warren labored on the house. It was small, just 3 rooms to start, but it was solid and well built. Natalie helped when she could, and they talked about their future as they worked. "How many children do you want?" she asked one April evening as they painted the bedroom walls. "However many we are blessed with. 2, 3, a dozen if you want," she laughed. "Let us start with one and see how it goes." "Fair enough. Boy or girl, I do not care as long as the baby is healthy." "Same here." They married on a bright Saturday in May 1879, almost 9 months after Natalie had arrived in Williamsburg. The ceremony was held at the small church in town, with Margaret and John as witnesses and about 20 friends and neighbors in attendance. Natalie wore a simple white dress that Margaret had helped her make, and she carried wildflowers from the meadow. Warren wore his best suit, his hair freshly cut, his boots polished. When the preacher asked if he would love and cherish Natalie, Warren's voice rang out clear and strong. "I will." When Natalie said the same, her voice was quieter but no less certain. They kissed as husband and wife, and the small church erupted in applause. Afterward, there was a celebration at the ranch with food and dancing and laughter. Warren danced with his new wife under the spring stars, holding her close, feeling like the luckiest man alive. That night, they went to their new house for the first time as a married couple. Warren carried Natalie over the threshold and she laughed, the sound like music. He set her down gently in the main room, where a fire crackled in the hearth and candles provided soft light. "Welcome home, Mrs. Hale," he said. "Mrs. Hale," she repeated, testing the name. "I like how that sounds, so do I." They stood there for a moment, just looking at each other. Then Natalie reached up and began unpinning her hair, letting the auburn waves fall over her shoulders. "I am nervous," she admitted. "We do not have to do anything you are not ready for," Warren said immediately. "We can just sleep, talk, whatever you want." "No, I want this, I want you. I am just nervous because before it was never about what I wanted, it was about what he demanded." Warren cupped her face gently in his hands. "Tonight is about you, about us, about love and choosing each other. We go slow, and if you want to stop at any point, we stop. No questions, no anger, no pressure. All right, all right." He kissed her softly, and she melted into him. They took their time, learning each other, and Warren kept his word. He was gentle and patient, checking in with her, making sure she was comfortable. When they finally came together, it was with tenderness and love, and afterward, Natalie cried in his arms. "Happy tears?" he asked, concerned. "Happy tears," she confirmed. "I did not know it could be like this. I did not know it could be about love instead of control." "It will always be about love with us," he promised. They settled into married life with surprising ease. Natalie continued to help Margaret at the ranch during the day, while Warren worked the land and tended the cattle. In the evenings, they returned to their small house, cooked dinner together, talked about their days. It was simple and beautiful and everything Warren had ever wanted. In August, Natalie told him she was pregnant. They were sitting on their porch watching the sunset when she took his hand and placed it on her still flat stomach. "There is a baby in there," she said simply. Warren felt his eyes fill with tears. "Truly, truly." "Margaret helped me figure it out. The baby should come in early spring, around March." He pulled her close, kissing her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. Thank you for giving me this gift. Thank you for being the kind of man I wanted to have a baby with." The pregnancy was not easy. Natalie was sick most mornings, and as she grew larger, her back ached and her feet swelled. But Warren was there for all of it, holding her hair when she was sick, massaging her back, helping her with tasks that became too difficult. He was endlessly patient and gentle, just as he had promised to be. One evening in February, when Natalie was huge and uncomfortable and convinced the baby would never come, she broke down crying. "I am enormous and ugly, and I cannot even see my own feet anymore," she sobbed. Warren knelt in front of her chair and took her hands. "You are beautiful. You are growing our child inside you, creating a whole new person from nothing. That is not ugly. That is a miracle. I feel like a whale. You feel like my wife, whom I love more than anything." She laughed through her tears. "You have to say that." "I do not have to say anything. I say it because it is true." The baby came on a cold night in March 1880. Warren rode hard to fetch the midwife while Margaret stayed with Natalie. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Warren was terrified he might lose her. But Natalie was strong, stronger than she had ever believed she could be. And finally, as dawn broke over the Virginia hills, the baby was born. "A boy," the midwife announced, holding up the squalling infant. Warren looked at his son, red and wrinkled and perfect, and felt his heart expand in ways he had not known were possible. Then he looked at Natalie, exhausted and sweaty but smiling, and fell in love with her all over again. "We have a son," she said wonderingly. "We do." He kissed her forehead. "You did so well. I am so proud of you." They named him William after the town where they had met. William Hale, with his mother's green eyes and his father's dark hair. He was healthy and loud and demanding, and Warren and Natalie were utterly besotted. The first few weeks were exhausting. The baby needed constant attention, and Natalie was recovering from the birth. Warren did everything he could to help, changing diapers, walking with William when he cried at night, cooking meals when Natalie was too tired. He never complained, never acted like it was beneath him. He had promised gentleness, and that extended to all aspects of their life together. "I could not do this without you," Natalie told him one night as they both sat bleary-eyed at 2 in the morning, trying to convince William to go back to sleep. "You could, but you do not have to. We are in this together." As William grew, he became the center of their world. He was a happy baby, quick to smile and curious about everything. Warren would carry him around the ranch, showing him the animals and talking to him like he understood every word. Natalie would sing to him, soft lullabies that she remembered from her own childhood. When William was 6 months old, Natalie's friend from Richmond sent another letter. Her former husband had remarried, a young woman from a well-to-do family. According to the friend, he was already treating his new wife poorly. "I wish I could warn her," Natalie said, reading the letter with a frown. "But she would not listen. I did not listen when people tried to warn me." "You cannot save everyone," Warren said gently. "You can only save yourself, and you did that. You got out. I got lucky. I found you. I am the lucky one." As William grew into a toddler, the Hale household grew livelier. He was into everything, curious and fearless and exhausting. Warren built him a small rocking horse and watched with delight as his son played with it for hours. Natalie taught him his letters and numbers, already planning for the day when he would be old enough for school. "He is going to be smart like his mother," Warren said proudly. "And kind like his father," Natalie added. In the spring of 1882, Natalie discovered she was pregnant again. William was 2 years old and running circles around them, and the thought of adding another baby to the mix was both exciting and terrifying. "Are you happy?" Natalie asked Warren when she told him, thrilled. "Are you?" "I am. Nervous but happy." This pregnancy was easier than the first. Natalie knew what to expect, and her body seemed to handle it better. In December, on a snowy evening just before Christmas, their daughter was born. Emma Hale came into the world with less drama than her brother, arriving quickly and efficiently. "She is beautiful," Warren said, holding his daughter for the first time. "She looks like you," Natalie said. "Poor girl. She is lucky. She will be beautiful because she has her father's strong features and her mother's coloring." William was fascinated by his new sister, wanting to help with everything. Warren taught him to be gentle, to support her head, to speak softly around her. "You are the big brother now," Warren told him. That means you help protect her and keep her safe." William took his job very seriously, always checking on Emma and bringing her toys she was too young to play with yet. The years passed in a blur of joy and hard work. Warren and John expanded the ranch, bringing in more cattle and horses. Warren's small house grew too, with Warren adding rooms as they needed them. Natalie helped Margaret less as her own household demanded more time, but the two women remained close friends. In 1885, a third child arrived, another boy they named Thomas after John's brother. And in 1887, their fourth and final child, a daughter named Grace. Their house was chaotic and loud and full of love. Warren would come home from long days of ranch work to find children climbing on him, all talking at once about their days. Natalie would watch from the kitchen doorway, smiling, still sometimes amazed that this was her life. "Did you ever imagine this?" she asked Warren one evening after the children were finally in bed. "Imagine what? This, all of this. A house full of children and love and laughter." "I dreamed of it," Warren admitted, "but I never thought I would be lucky enough to have it. I did not even let myself dream of it. After my first marriage, I thought maybe I was not meant for happiness. But then you bought me lunch and promised gentleness, and everything changed." Warren pulled her close. "I will always keep that promise. To you and to our children. They will grow up knowing what a good marriage looks like, what real love is. They will never wonder if it is normal for a husband to hurt his wife, because they will never see me treat you with anything but respect and tenderness. I know. That is why I feel safe bringing children into this world with you. Because I know you will love them and protect them and teach them how to be good people." As the children grew, Warren and Natalie made sure to spend time with each of them individually. Warren taught William how to work the ranch, how to care for animals, how to be responsible. He taught Emma how to ride a horse properly and how to stand up for herself. Thomas learned carpentry at his father's side, and little Grace, who was fearless and wild, learned everything she could from all of them. Natalie taught all the children to read and write and do arithmetic. She told them stories and sang them songs and made sure they knew they were loved unconditionally. She also made sure Emma and Grace knew they were just as valuable as their brothers, that being female did not make them less important or capable. "Your mother is the strongest person I know," Warren told them all one day. "She escaped a bad situation with nothing but courage and hope, and she built a whole new life. That takes real strength. Remember that." In 1895, when William was 15, he asked his parents about the scar on his mother's lip, barely visible now but still there if you looked closely. Natalie and Warren exchanged glances, and then Natalie told him the truth. She told all the children the truth, in age-appropriate ways. About her first marriage, about the abuse, about finding the courage to leave. "I tell you this not to make you sad, but to make you understand something important," she said, looking at each of her children in turn. "Love should never hurt. If someone tells you they love you and then hurts you, that is not love. Real love is what your father shows me every single day. Kindness, respect, gentleness, partnership. That is what you should look for when you are old enough to think about marriage." "I am never getting married," Emma declared. "Boys are stupid," Warren laughed. "You might change your mind when you are older. Or you might not, and that is fine too," Natalie added. "The point is, it is your choice. Your life is yours to decide." Years continued to pass. The children grew into young adults. William took over more and more of the ranch work, showing the same dedication his father had. Emma became a teacher, following in her mother's original footsteps. Thomas started his own carpentry business in town. Grace, true to her spirited nature, became a horse trainer. one of the few women in the profession and determined to prove she was just as good as any man. Warren and Natalie watched their children flourish with pride. Their house, which had been so chaotic when the children were young, became quieter. But it was a peaceful quiet, the kind that comes from a life well lived and love well shared. On their 20th wedding anniversary in 1899, Warren took Natalie back to the spot where he had proposed, in the barn on New Year's Eve. 20 years, he said, taking her hands in his. And I love you more now than I did then. I did not think that was possible, but I feel the same way, Natalie said. Thank you for keeping your promise, Warren. You have been gentle with me every single day of our marriage. Even when things were hard, even when we disagreed, even when I was difficult or emotional or unreasonable, you were patient and kind. You have never been unreasonable, and even if you were, I promised. I promised to be gentle always, and I meant it. That promise was not just for the easy days. It was for all the days. She kissed him, and it was just as sweet as their first kiss had been all those years ago. I love you, Warren Hale. I love you, Natalie Hale. As the new century approached, they found themselves becoming grandparents. William married a kind woman named Sarah, and they had 2 children. Emma surprised everyone by falling in love with a fellow teacher, a gentle man who appreciated her intelligence and spirit. Even Grace, who had sworn she had no time for romance, fell for a fellow horse trainer. Warren and Natalie's house, which had grown quiet, became loud again with grandchildren visiting. Warren would sit on the porch with babies on his lap, just as he had done with his own children, telling stories and singing silly songs. Natalie would bake cookies and let the grandchildren help, patiently cleaning up the flour they spilled everywhere. We did good, Warren said one evening as they watched their family gathered around the dinner table, 3 generations laughing and talking. We did, Natalie agreed. We built something beautiful. John and Margaret Hollister had passed by then, leaving the ranch to William, who ran it with the same integrity his father and the Hollisters had shown. Warren still helped when he could, though his body was not as young as it once was. His hands were gnarled from years of hard work, his back ached in the mornings, but he never complained. You have earned your rest, Natalie would tell him. I will rest when I am dead. Until then, I have work to do. But he did slow down, spending more time with Natalie, taking walks together, sitting on their porch watching the sunset just as they had when they were young. One evening in the summer of 1910, when they were both in their late 50s, Natalie asked Warren if he had any regrets. Regrets? He thought about it for a moment. I regret not meeting you sooner. I regret the pain you went through before you found your way here. But I do not regret anything since that day I saw you step off the stagecoach. Every day with you has been a gift, even the hard days. Especially the hard days because we got through them together. That is what marriage is, Natalie. It is not just being together when everything is perfect. It is standing by each other when things are difficult. It is choosing each other every single day. I choose you, she said softly. Today and every day. And I choose you. As they moved into their 60s and then their 70s, their love deepened in ways they had not anticipated. It was not the passionate, consuming love of youth, though that still flared up sometimes. It was something steadier and stronger, built on decades of shared experiences, of raising children together, of supporting each other through joy and sorrow. When Warren's hands became too stiff with arthritis to button his shirts, Natalie did it for him without comment. When Natalie's vision started to fade, Warren read to her every evening, bringing the stories she loved to life with his voice. They took care of each other with the same gentleness they had always shown. Their children and grandchildren visited often, and occasionally great-grandchildren would appear, tiny babies who looked at Warren and Natalie with wide, curious eyes. "You are old," one of the great-grandchildren said bluntly to Warren one day. "Benjamin, that is rude," his mother scolded. But Warren just laughed. "I am old, very old, and you know what? I am grateful for every single year because I got to spend them with your great-grandmother." Natalie, sitting beside him, squeezed his hand. On their 50th wedding anniversary in 1929, their children threw them a party that seemed to include half the county. The small church where they had married was packed with family and friends, and the celebration afterward went on for hours. Warren and Natalie stood in the center of it all, holding hands, watching the life they had built swirl around them. 50 years, Natalie marveled. "It seems like both forever and no time at all." "I would do it all again," Warren said. "Every single moment exactly the same. Even the parts where I was difficult, especially those parts. They made the good parts even better." She leaned her head on his shoulder, and they stood there together, surrounded by love. As they moved into their 80s, their health began to fail in earnest. Warren had trouble with his heart, and Natalie's bones became brittle and fragile. They moved more slowly, slept more often, but their minds remained sharp and their love remained strong. They still held hands when they walked, though now they both used canes. They still kissed good morning and good night. They still said, "I love you," every single day. One morning in the spring of 1935, Warren woke to find Natalie still asleep beside him. The morning light filtered through the curtains, and he watched her peaceful face, this woman who had changed his entire life by simply stepping off a stagecoach all those years ago. "I love you," he whispered. Not wanting to wake her, her eyes fluttered open and she smiled at him. "I love you too. How long have you been awake?" "Just a few minutes. I was watching you sleep." "That is a boring pastime, not to me. You are still the most beautiful thing I have ever seen." She laughed, the sound a bit wheezy now but still full of joy. "You are a terrible liar, Warren Hale." "I have never lied to you. Not once in 56 years. I know. That is one of the things I love most about you." They lay there together, holding hands, listening to the sounds of the ranch waking up outside their window. Their grandson was running the place now, William having retired a few years earlier. The cycle continued, generation after generation, but the foundation Warren and Natalie had built remained strong. "No regrets?" Warren asked, echoing her question from so many years ago. "Not a single one. Except maybe that we do not have more time. We have had a lifetime, a good lifetime." "The best," she agreed. Warren passed away in his sleep that December, just after his 84th birthday. He went peacefully, with Natalie holding his hand, surrounded by children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. His last words were, "I love you, Natalie. Always." Natalie mourned him deeply, but not hopelessly. She had been given 56 years with a man who had kept every promise he ever made to her, who had shown her that love could be gentle and true and lasting. She had 4 children who adored her, a dozen grandchildren, and more great-grandchildren than she could sometimes keep track of. She had built a beautiful life from the ashes of her first marriage, and Warren had been the foundation of it all. She lived for 3 more years, spending her time with family, telling stories about Warren to anyone who would listen. She made sure everyone knew what kind of man he had been, what kind of husband and father and grandfather. "He promised me gentleness," she would say, and he kept that promise always. "Every single day he showed me what real love looks like." She passed away in the spring of 1938, sitting in her favorite chair on the porch, looking out over the ranch. Her daughter Emma found her there, peaceful and still, a slight smile on her face. They buried her next to Warren in the small cemetery behind the church where they had married. The headstone was simple but perfect. Warren and Natalie Hale, united in life, united in death. Love always wins. Their children, standing at the graveside, holding their own children and grandchildren, knew it was true. Love had won. Their parents had proven that, had lived it every single day. And the legacy they left behind was not just land or money or possessions. It was the knowledge that real love exists, that gentleness and respect and partnership are not just ideals but realities that can be lived and shared and passed down through generations. The small house Warren had built for Natalie all those years ago still stood on the edge of the ranch, maintained lovingly by their descendants. It became a place of pilgrimage for the family, a reminder of where it all began. Of a bruised woman stepping off a stagecoach and a cowboy who saw beyond her injuries to the strong, beautiful person beneath. Of a promise made and kept every single day for more than half a century. On summer evenings, if you stood very quiet and still on the porch of that little house, you could almost hear them still. Warren's deep voice and Natalie's laughter, the sound of a love story that had weathered every storm and emerged stronger for it. Their great-great-grandchildren would sometimes ask to hear the story, and whoever was telling it would always start the same way. She arrived with a bruised cheek, and your great-great-grandfather promised her gentleness. And he kept that promise always, showing all of us what true love really means. And in those words, Warren and Natalie lived on, their love story a beacon for all who came after, proof that even the darkest beginnings could lead to the brightest endings, and that a promise kept was the greatest gift one person could give another.